Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is something that I've actually been wanting to share for a really long time. It's honestly a topic that's super close to my heart, which is mental health, and specifically eating disorders and nutrition. I wanted to talk about this because not only have I personally been through my own experience with EDs and recovery, but also so many people that I've loved have struggled with their relationships with food, body image, or exercise at some point. It's honestly so much more common than most people realize, and I think that's part of the problem. It's something that so many people silently deal with, but barely anyone really talks about it in a way that feels human and honest. When I was going through it, I remember how isolating and scary it felt, like nobody really got it, or that I was the only one struggling. But as soon as I started opening up and connecting with others, I realized that there are so many other people who have felt that same fear, confusion, or guilt around food in their bodies. So if this video can make even one person feel a little less alone or a little bit more hopeful, then it's worth making. My main goal with this video is to educate, debunk myths, and bring awareness, but also to bring compassion into the conversation. There are so many misconceptions about eating disorders, nutrition, and recovery, like the idea that eating disorders are just about food, or that they only happen to thin people, or that you have to look sick to be struggling. All of those are so far from the truth. But before we dive into anything, I wanted to make a quick disclaimer. I'm not a doctor, dietitian, or therapist. I'm just someone who's gone through this, learned a lot through my own treatment and education, and wants to share what's helped me understand my body and mind better. Everything I share in this video is from personal experience and research, but it's not medical advice. If you're struggling or suspect you might be, please reach out to a licensed professional. You deserve real support and care. Also, trigger warning, there will be a lot of mentions of eating disorders, recovery, malnutrition, and related topics. Please take care of yourself while watching. If at any point it feels too heavy or uncomfortable, it's completely okay to pause, skip sections, or step away. Your safety and well-being always comes first. And lastly, I just wanted to say, eating disorders are not just about food. They're complex mental health conditions that involve so many things: emotions, self-worth, control, trauma, perfectionism, identity. And food just becomes the language that the struggle speaks through. It's not just about wanting to be skinny or healthy. It's about coping with something deeper, and that's where recovery goes so far beyond just eating more or less. So if you've ever felt trapped in that cycle of guilt, fear, obsession, or confusion, I see you. And I hope that this video can help you understand what's really going on beneath the surface and that healing is possible. Okay, so before we get into the details about treatment, nutrition, and recovery, I really want to talk about some of the most common misconceptions about eating disorders, because honestly, these myths are everywhere, and they're part of why so many people go undiagnosed or feel like they're not sick enough to get help. The first big one: you can tell if someone has an eating disorder just by looking at them. This is such a harmful myth. You cannot tell if someone has an eating disorder based on their size, weight, or appearance. People of all body types can be struggling, whether they're underweight, average weight, or in a larger body. Eating disorders are mental health conditions, not just physical ones. They don't have a specific look, and assuming someone is fine just because they quote-unquote don't look sick invalidates so many people's experiences and delays them in getting help. The next one: eating disorders are all about wanting to be skinny. This one couldn't be further from the truth. While body image can definitely be a factor, eating disorders are way more complex. They're often rooted in things like anxiety, trauma, perfectionism, control, low self-esteem, or emotional pain. For a lot of people, food becomes a coping mechanism, a way to feel in control again when everything else feels chaotic. It's not about vanity, it's about survival and emotional regulation. Another big misconception: eating disorders are just anorexia. A lot of people think that eating disorder automatically means anorexia, but that's just one type. There's also bulimia, binge eating disorder, ARFID, orthorexia, and OSFED, which is actually one of the most common diagnoses. Each one looks different, and not everyone's experience fits neatly into one label. So if your symptoms don't match exactly what you've seen portrayed online or in the media, that doesn't make them any less real or less serious. Another one that comes up a lot: you have to be underweight to have an actual eating disorder. Absolutely not. Weight is not a requirement for diagnosis. You can be any size and still have a life-threatening eating disorder. Many people fall through the cracks because their labs look fine or their weight is normal, so their behaviors are minimized or even praised. But the truth is, eating disorders are dangerous no matter what your body looks like, and the internal damage can happen long before any physical signs are visible. Then there's this one: recovery just means eating again. Eating again is a part of recovery, but it's definitely not the whole picture. Recovery means unlearning the thought patterns, fears, and rules that come with the disorder. It's about rebuilding trust with your body, addressing the emotional and psychological side, and learning how to live again, not just survive. Physically nourishing yourself is one step, but mental and emotional healing take time and support. And finally, once your labs are fine or once you've gained weight, you're recovered. I wish it were that simple. Just because your labs look good or your body is medically stable enough doesn't mean you're mentally recovered. A lot of people, myself included, have experienced that stage where you look fine on the outside, but inside you're still fighting constant thoughts and fears around food. Recovery isn't just about numbers, it's about freedom. It's when you can eat without guilt, move your body because it feels good, and actually live your life again. These misconceptions make it so much harder for people to recognize that they need help or believe that they deserve help. So I think it's really important to keep spreading awareness that eating disorders are complex, serious, and incredibly misunderstood. No matter what you look like or what your diagnosis is, if you're struggling with your relationship with food or your body, it's valid and you deserve support. Now that we've gone over some of the biggest misconceptions, I want to talk about a few different types of eating disorders. A lot of people only really hear about anorexia or bulimia, but there are actually several kinds, and they all deserve to be talked about and taken seriously. Let's start with probably the most well-known one, anorexia nervosa. Anorexia is often characterized by restriction of food intake, an intense fear of gaining weight, and a distorted body image. But it's not just about not eating. It's about the deep anxiety and compulsive need for control that drives the behavior. Some people with anorexia may overexercise, avoid certain foods, or feel extreme guilt after eating. It's one of the deadliest mental illnesses because of the medical complications that can happen from malnutrition. But with the right help and support, full recovery is possible. Next, bulimia nervosa. Bulimia involves cycles of binge eating, eating large amounts of food in a short period of time, often feeling out of control, followed by compensatory behaviors like vomiting, fasting, overexercising, or using laxatives. A lot of people with bulimia appear to have normal body sizes, quote-unquote normal body sizes, which makes it harder for others to notice what's going on. It's a deeply emotional cycle, not about a lack of discipline, but about using food and behaviors as a coping mechanism for difficult emotions or stress. Then there's binge eating disorder, or BED. This one is actually the most common eating disorder, and it's often misunderstood. It's characterized by episodes of eating large amounts of food, often quickly and to the point of discomfort, paired with feelings of guilt or shame afterwards. The key difference is that there's no purging or compensatory behavior afterwards. BED is not about laziness or lack of willpower. It's a serious mental health condition that often stems from emotional distress, restrictive dieting, or trauma. Next up, ARFID, which stands for Avoidant/Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. ARFID isn't really about body image or fear of gaining weight. Instead, it's about a lack of interest in food, fear of choking or vomiting, or extreme sensitivity to food textures, smells, or tastes. It's sometimes compared to extreme picky eating, but it's much more severe. It can cause significant nutrient deficiencies, weight loss, and emotional stress. It's actually more common than people realize, especially among younger individuals or people with sensory sensitivities. Then we have OSFED, which stands for Other Specified Feeding or Eating Disorder. This one is really important because it's basically a category for people who don't fit perfectly into the other definitions but are still really struggling. It could be someone who restricts food but still gets their period, or someone who binges and purges less frequently than the criteria, quote-unquote criteria, for bulimia. The thing is, OSFED can be just as dangerous, physically and emotionally, as the other types. It's also one of the most common diagnoses in eating disorder treatment settings. Now, one that's not officially recognized in the DSM, which is like the mental health diagnosis manual, but still very real, orthorexia. It's an unhealthy obsession with eating pure, clean, or healthy foods. It can start out as wanting to eat better, but it slowly becomes rigid and fear-based, where people cut out more and more foods, avoid social situations, or feel intense guilt when they eat something quote-unquote unhealthy. It's not officially listed as its own disorder, but many professionals acknowledge it because it can lead to serious nutritional deficiencies and emotional distress. And lastly, pica and rumination disorder. These are less common but still really important to mention. Pica involves eating things that aren't food, like paper, chalk, hair, dirt, or soap. It's often linked to nutritional deficiencies, such as iron or zinc, or developmental conditions. Rumination disorder is when someone repeatedly regurgitates and re-chews food after eating, not because of nausea or a medical issue, but as a part of a behavioral pattern. It can cause serious health issues if left untreated, and it's often misunderstood or misdiagnosed. All of these disorders are serious and valid, and none of them are just about food. They're all about emotions, control, fear, trauma, and coping. And they all deserve compassionate and professional support. So, I want to talk about what actually happens to the body during malnutrition and in recovery. Because eating disorders are often misunderstood as being purely mental, which they partly are, but they also have very real physical consequences on the body. Your body is constantly trying to survive, even when your mind is working against it. When you're malnourished, your body goes into energy conservation mode, or basically survival mode. Since you're not taking in enough energy, the body has to slow down everything to keep you alive. Your metabolism drops, your body temperature decreases, and your heart rate slows down. This is called bradycardia. Your blood pressure might drop too, and you can start feeling dizzy, lightheaded, and faint when you stand up. Your hair might thin or fall out, your skin might get dry or develop fine hair called lanugo, and your body stops prioritizing things that aren't essential for survival, such as your period, growth, or even maintaining your hair and nails. It's the body's way of saying, I need to preserve every bit of energy I can. Over time, this energy conservation affects your brain too. Your ability to focus, think clearly, and regulate emotions gets weaker because your brain literally doesn't have enough fuel. Your heart, which is a muscle, can actually shrink in size from malnutrition, and so can your stomach and other organs. That's why eating can feel physically painful or uncomfortable when you first start recovery. Your body isn't used to it anymore. Now, when treatment starts and your body gets regular nourishment again, that process is called refeeding. Refeeding is essential, but it's also something that has to be done carefully, especially for people who have been malnourished for a long time. This is because of something called refeeding syndrome. Refeeding syndrome happens when someone starts eating again after a period of starvation, and their body suddenly shifts from breaking down tissue for energy to using carbohydrates again. This sounds good, but the problem is that shift can cause a sudden surge of insulin, and your body starts pulling important minerals like phosphorus, potassium, and magnesium from your blood into your cells to process the new energy. The result? Those minerals in your blood can drop to dangerously low levels, and that can lead to serious complications like heart failure, seizures, or respiratory problems. And that's why in hospitals or treatment centers, refeeding is very closely monitored. They check labs often, monitor vital signs, and may start with smaller meals or liquid nutrition to stabilize things safely. A lot of what we know about refeeding syndrome actually comes from history, specifically after World War II. Researchers noticed that when they tried to refeed starved concentration camp survivors too quickly, some of them actually died, not from starvation itself, but from the shock their bodies experienced when they finally received food again. That's how doctors learned that reintroducing nutrition had to be done slowly with close medical supervision. But here's the thing, even once you're medically stable, that doesn't mean you're recovered. Weight restoration and recovery are not the same thing. Gaining weight or having your labs return to normal is just the first step. It's the physical foundation. But your brain still needs time to heal, and your relationship with food, body image, and control doesn't fix itself overnight. That's why treatment focuses both on the physical and mental aspects of recovery. Let's also talk about why hunger cues disappear in the first place and how they come back. When you've been undernourished for a long time, your body suppresses your hunger hormones like ghrelin and leptin because it's trying to conserve energy. Your stomach literally shrinks and digestion slows down, so you might not feel hungry even when your body desperately needs food. Over time, with consistent nourishment, your stomach gradually expands back to normal size, your metabolism wakes back up, and those hunger cues do come back, even though at first they can feel confusing or scary. It's the same with digestion. During malnutrition, your gut slows down dramatically. That's why bloating, constipation, or fullness after small meals are so common in early recovery. It's not that your body is rejecting food, it's actually healing. Your intestines need to relearn how to process and move food through again. The bloating and discomfort are often temporary, and they're a sign that your system was waking up again. And through all of this, your body isn't fighting you. Even when it feels like your body is betraying you with bloating, fatigue, swelling, or weight changes, it's actually doing the exact opposite. It's fighting for you. It's trying to rebuild what was lost, repair your organs, restore your hormones, and bring you back to life. It's so easy to hate your body when you're in recovery, but when you think about it, it's kind of incredible. After everything you've put it through, it still chooses to keep you alive. It doesn't give up on you. So, when it comes to recovery, one of the biggest parts that people don't really talk about enough is nutritional rehabilitation, actually getting enough energy, protein, vitamins, and minerals for your body to start healing. And for a lot of people, that process includes things like oral supplements or even tube feeding, depending on how severe the malnutrition is or how difficult it is to meet nutritional needs with food alone. Let's start with oral supplements, things like Ensure, Boost, and Kate Farms. These are basically nutritionally complete drinks that provide a balanced mix of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, minerals, and vitamins. Basically, it's all the nutrients your body needs in a form that's easy to digest and absorb. They're especially useful during early recovery when your body might not tolerate large meals or when eating solid food feels physically or emotionally overwhelming. They can also help fill in the gaps if you're still working up to eating full meals consistently. Each brand and type of supplement has a slightly different formulation. For example, Ensure Plus and Boost Plus are usually higher in calories, with a fairly even macronutrient balance. Kate Farms is plant-based, dairy-free, and made with organic ingredients. It's also slightly higher in carbs and fiber compared to Ensure or Boost, and it's often used for people with allergies or sensitivities. Protein content can range from around 13 to 20 grams per bottle depending on the type, and they're all fortified with essential vitamins and minerals, usually providing around 20 to 30% of your daily needs per serving. The idea of these is not to replace meals forever, but to bridge the gap until your body and your appetite can catch up. They can also be life-saving when someone isn't able to meet their needs through food for a period of time. In more severe cases, especially when someone is medically unstable or unable to eat enough orally, for example because of GI issues, extreme restriction, or after hospitalization, tube feeding might be necessary. Now, I know that sounds really scary, but it's actually a very common and safe method of providing nutrition. Tube feeding means delivering liquid nutrition directly into the stomach or small intestine through a soft tube, either through the nose, called an NG tube, or through the abdomen, so a G tube or a J tube. It's not a punishment or a failure, even though it can feel like it. Trust me, I've been there many times, and it can feel so crushing and scary. But it's a medical tool that helps stabilize the body and prevent complications. Many people think of it as temporary support, kind of like crutches while you're healing from an injury. Once your body is stronger and you can eat enough again, the tube can be removed. Liquid nutrition, whether through oral supplements or tube feeding, is sometimes necessary because your digestive system and hunger cues can take time to come back. And during refeeding, your body's needs are actually higher than normal because it's trying to rebuild tissues, repair organs, and restore energy reserves. It's like trying to refill a drained battery while also powering the device at the same time. You need extra fuel to get back to baseline. Let's talk a little bit about how these formulas differ from regular food. Most supplement formulas are balanced to give around 50 to 60% of calories from carbohydrates, 15 to 20% from protein, and 25 to 30% from fat, with all the essential micronutrients added. They're designed to be easily digested, shelf-stable, and consistent, so you know exactly what your body is getting, which is also really helpful when trying to stabilize electrolytes and prevent refeeding complications. They're also fortified with vitamins and minerals that tend to be depleted in malnutrition, things like phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, zinc, vitamin D, B12, folate, and iron. Each of these nutrients plays a really important role. For example, phosphorus is crucial for energy production, ATP, and muscle function, often the first to drop dangerously during refeeding syndrome. Potassium is needed for heart rhythm and muscle contractions. Magnesium supports nerve function and helps regulate heartbeat. Zinc helps with wound healing and taste and smell. Low zinc can make food taste weird or metallic. Vitamin D and calcium are needed for bone repair and strength, especially important if bone density was lost during malnutrition. B vitamins like B12 and folate support brain function, red blood cell formation, and energy metabolism. Low levels can lead to fatigue, depression, or brain fog. Iron prevents anemia and supports oxygen transport in the blood. Deficiencies in these can cause a wide range of symptoms: fatigue, weakness, irregular heartbeat, numbness or tingling, brittle hair or nails, or even anxiety and mood swings, all of which can make recovery harder if not addressed. That's why during treatment, doctors and dietitians often monitor these lab values closely and may recommend additional supplements or changes in the feeding plan to correct imbalances safely. It's also why liquid nutrition can be such an important part of recovery. Sometimes your body just needs help catching up, and that's okay. It doesn't make you weak or behind. It means your body is finally being supported in the way that it needs to be. Recovery from an eating disorder isn't just about starting to eat again. It's about completely rebuilding your relationship with food, your body, and yourself. And it's hard, like really hard. But there's also structure, support, and science behind it, and it's important to understand what that looks like. Treatment for eating disorders happens across different levels of care depending on how medically or psychiatrically stable someone is. Inpatient is the highest level, usually in a hospital setting. It's for when someone is medically unstable, maybe their heart rate, blood pressure, or labs are concerning. Meals are structured, vitals and labs are checked frequently, and everything is monitored closely to prevent complications like refeeding syndrome. You usually don't have access to phones or outside food, and the main focus is stabilization, physically and sometimes emotionally. Residential is still 24-hour care, but in a less clinical setting. People live there full time, have meals and snacks there supervised, and go to multiple therapy groups a day and continue medical monitoring. It's very structured, every part of the day is planned, but you start doing more emotional work, not just the eating. Partial Hospitalization Program, or PHP, means that you're at treatment most of the day, usually around 6 to 10 hours, but you go home at night. It's a bridge between residential and real life. You eat meals and snacks there, do therapy, group sessions, and medical check-ins, but you also begin to practice recovery skills outside of the center. Intensive Outpatient Program, or IOP, is usually a few hours, several days a week. You might do therapy groups, meal support, and sessions with a dietitian or therapist, but most of your day is your own. It's more flexible, and it's about applying the coping skills and tools you've gained in treatment while still getting the guidance and support. Outpatient is the most common and ongoing form of treatment. Therapy once a week and a dietitian check-in, maybe a psychiatrist. Outpatient is the most common and ongoing form of treatment. Therapy once or twice a week, a dietitian check-in, and maybe a psychiatrist. It's usually where long-term healing and relapse prevention happens. At every level, meals and snacks are structured and planned by dietitians to meet full nutritional needs. You often eat with staff or peers for meal support, meaning someone sits with you, helps guide conversations, and supports you through fear foods, portion anxiety, or urges to compensate. There are also therapy sessions, both group and individual, focusing on body image, trauma, coping mechanisms, and the psychological roots of the eating disorder. You might do skill-based groups like DBT, Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, or CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, learning ways to regulate emotions and tolerate distress. Food is just one piece of the puzzle. Eating disorders are rarely just about the food. They're often about control, trauma, perfectionism, anxiety, or self-worth. Treatment works to untangle all of those underlying issues, and that's why therapy is a huge part of recovery, because healing your relationship with yourself has to happen alongside nourishing your body. Your treatment team often includes a therapist to address the emotional and psychological side, a dietitian to guide the nutritional and physical restoration process, a psychiatrist to manage medications or co-occurring conditions like depression or anxiety, and a medical doctor to monitor vitals, labs, and physical health. Each person plays a specific role, but they communicate constantly so you're supported from all angles. Meal support can look different depending on the level of care. Sometimes it's staff sitting with you, gently redirecting conversation, or helping you challenge fear foods. Sometimes it's peers eating together, supporting each other through anxiety and guilt. And eventually, it's you learning to sit with discomfort, to eat even when you don't feel hungry, to trust your body, and to prove to yourself that food isn't the enemy. Now for common fears about treatment. A lot of people fear losing control. They're scared of being forced to eat or gaining too much weight or of being judged. They fear letting go of something that has felt safe, familiar, or comforting. But the truth is, treatment isn't about punishment or control. It's about giving your body what it needs so your mind can heal. You can't think clearly, process trauma, or regulate emotions when your brain is starving. Support systems like family, friends, and treatment peers can make a huge difference. Having people who remind you why you started recovery, who hold you accountable, who eat with you, or talk you through tough moments can be the difference between relapse and progress. But not everyone has that kind of support, which is why professional treatment is so important. It gives you the external scaffolding to build internal strength. For me, I went through many hospitals, residentials, and all the levels of care multiple times. I've gone through periods of refeeding, experienced the crippling fear of food, felt so misunderstood, lonely, and hopeless. There were moments I felt unheard or traumatized by certain approaches. Some places were too rigid, others lacked basic compassion. It's important to acknowledge that treatment isn't perfect. It can be messy, triggering, and sometimes even feel counterproductive. But it can also save your life. It can give you the tools, awareness, and connection you never thought you'd have. Recovery isn't linear, and no two journeys look the same. You don't have to be ready, you just have to be willing to try. Eating disorders don't happen in a vacuum. They're almost always tangled up with mental health, things like anxiety, depression, OCD, trauma, and perfectionism. It's not just about food or body image, it's about coping, about trying to feel safe, in control, or numb when everything else feels chaotic or unbearable. Many people with eating disorders also experience anxiety, depression, or obsessive-compulsive traits, and that's not a coincidence. Restricting, binging, purging, those behaviors can become coping mechanisms. They temporarily numb emotions or create a sense of control when everything else feels unpredictable. With anxiety, food rules and routines can act like rituals, something to cling onto when your thoughts are racing. With depression, the lack of energy, self-worth, or motivation can make eating or self-care feel impossible. With OCD, the focus on numbers, calories, and, quote, perfect eating can merge into compulsive habits that feel impossible to break. These conditions often overlap, which is why recovery has to address both the mental and physical healing. A common thread in eating disorders is perfectionism, this constant drive to do everything right, to be disciplined, to never slip up. For some, it's about controlling food or body size because other parts of life feel out of control. For others, it's tied to achievement, needing to feel enough by being perfect. But that control quickly becomes the thing controlling you. What started as a way to cope or self-regulate can turn into a mental cage, where every bite, every number, every perceived mistake defines your worth. Recovery means learning that control isn't safety, flexibility is. Many people describe their eating disorder as having a separate voice, the eating disorder voice. It's that harsh, critical, manipulative whisper that says, you don't deserve to eat that, you'll be happier if you lose weight, you're weak for resting, and much more. That voice thrives on shame and secrecy. It creates rules about what you can eat, how much, when, how to move your body, how to earn rest, and then punishes you for breaking them. Recovery means learning to separate yourself from that voice, to recognize it as the disorder, not your identity. You start to build a new internal voice, one that's compassionate, rational, and grounded in care, not criticism. Now for identity loss in recovery and feeling grief over losing the eating disorder. I feel like this part doesn't get talked about enough. When you recover, you don't just lose the behaviors, but you can often lose what felt like a part of you. For a lot of people, the eating disorder becomes part of their identity, the thing that makes them feel special, disciplined, or safe. Letting go of it can feel like losing control, losing structure, or even losing a sense of who you are. That's grief, and it's valid. Recovery means learning who you are without the disorder, rediscovering hobbies, joy, values that were buried underneath survival. It's confusing, but it's also one of the most freeing parts of healing. Also, I will mention, in treatment or even online spaces, comparison is rampant. People compare diagnoses, weight changes, intake amounts, how sick they were, and much more. It's painful because the disorder often twists even recovery into another competition. But comparison is just another symptom of insecurity. It's the eating disorder's way of keeping you trapped. Your recovery isn't invalid if your symptoms look different. You don't have to prove your pain to deserve healing. Everyone's journey is valid, and the hardest comparison to stop making is the one between who you were and the one who you're becoming. If someone you love is struggling, the most important thing is to approach them with compassion, not confrontation. Don't comment on their food or body. Comment on how they seem. Say things like, I've noticed you've seemed really anxious lately. Are you okay? Or, I care about you and I'm worried. You don't have to go through this alone. Or, I'm here to listen, not to judge. It's about being consistent and gentle. You can't force someone to recover, but you can plant seeds of safety and trust, and that matters more than you think. Confrontation often fuels shame, and shame feeds the disorder. Compassion interrupts that cycle. When you approach someone or yourself with kindness, patience, and curiosity, you open the door for healing. Recovery isn't about willpower. It's about support, trust, and learning to care for yourself even when you don't think you deserve it. It's about choosing compassion again and again, even when the voice in your head tells you not to. Okay, so here are some educational nuggets. Random but fascinating facts about eating disorders, nutrition, and recovery that I feel like more people should know. Some of these might actually surprise you. I don't know. To start, eating disorders aren't just a modern social media thing. They've actually existed for centuries, just in different forms. In the Middle Ages, for example, there were records of something called holy fasting, where women, often nuns, would restrict food as a form of religious devotion or purity. One of the most famous examples is Saint Catherine of Siena, who reportedly starved herself as an act of spiritual sacrifice. In the Victorian era, doctors began noticing a condition called hysterical anorexia, which is now recognized as anorexia nervosa. So while the context and triggers have changed, as in social media, beauty standards, diet culture, the psychological roots have been around for centuries. The control, identity, and emotional regulation, they've been here for way longer than most people think. Next, malnutrition affects brain structure and function. This one is a little wild, but super important. When the body is malnourished, it's not just your weight that changes, it's your brain. MRI studies have shown that malnutrition can cause gray and white matter shrinkage, meaning that the brain literally loses volume. That's why part of people struggling with EDs often experience memory problems, brain fog, obsessive thinking, and difficulty concentrating. But here's the hopeful part: the brain can heal. With adequate nutrition and feeding, most of that lost brain tissue regrows. Neuroplasticity is amazing, and it shows how much recovery really is physical and psychological. In recovery, it's normal to crave high-calorie foods. A big misconception people have is thinking that craving things like chocolate, chips, fast food, etc. means that they're losing control. But in reality, your body is trying to restore balance. When you've been underfed, your hormones, ghrelin, leptin, neuropeptide Y, and more, go haywire. Your body remembers the deficit and craves energy-dense foods to catch up. It's not weakness, it's biology. Cravings for high-calorie foods are your body's way of saying, hey, we've been deprived, we need energy fast. And as your body heals and stabilizes, those extreme cravings usually will mellow out naturally. A lot of people also don't realize this, but when you start eating more again, your metabolism basically wakes up. During malnutrition, your body enters energy conservation mode. Lower heart rate, lower body temperature, slower digestion, slower everything. But once you start refeeding, your metabolism revs up hard. This can cause night sweats, vivid dreams, or trouble sleeping as your body adjusts to processing more energy again. It's really uncomfortable, but it's actually a sign that your system is restarting, like flipping the power back on after a long blackout. When you're malnourished or stuck in disordered eating patterns, your hunger and fullness cues get completely dysregulated. The hormones that balance hunger, ghrelin, which signals hunger, and leptin, which signals fullness, go off balance. You might feel never hungry or always hungry, or hungry at quote-unquote weird times. That's normal. During recovery, it can take weeks or even months for your cues to come back online. Sometimes your body will ask for more food than you think it should because it's trying to repair internal damage. Organs, hormones, bone density, muscle tissue, even brain cells. Learning to eat by mechanical hunger, scheduled, consistent meals, helps retrain your body's rhythm until those natural cues return. So yeah, eating disorders are way deeper than people think. They have historical, biological, and psychological roots that go way beyond food. Your body isn't broken for reacting the way it does in recovery. It's literally healing. Every craving, night sweat, weird sleep cycle, or energy spike is part of your system finding balance again, and it's kind of beautiful, honestly. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's that recovery is possible. Even if it doesn't feel like it right now, even if it feels far, far away, messy, or impossible, it's not. Healing isn't linear, and it doesn't happen overnight, but every single small choice towards nourishment, towards rest, towards gentleness, it all matters. You don't have to hit rock bottom to deserve help. You don't have to be underweight, or hospitalized, or visibly struggling to qualify for care. You deserve help simply because you're hurting, because you're human. And if you've ever told yourself, I'm not sick enough, or other people have it worse, please know that's your illness talking, not the truth. There is no sick enough. Everyone deserves support, everyone deserves to eat, and everyone deserves to feel safe in their body. If you or someone you know is struggling, I'll have some resources and helplines linked below. Please don't hesitate to reach out. It's scary, I know, but you never have to do this alone. Be kind to yourself, be patient. Recovery isn't about forcing yourself to love everything about your body. It's about learning to respect it, to listen to it, and to stop punishing it for trying to protect you. Your worth has never been tied to your weight, your size, or your appearance. You are not your disorder. You are not the number on a scale, or a label, or your worst moment. You are someone who deserves to live a full, beautiful life, one that's not ruled by fear, but filled with moments of peace, laughter, and connection. And I promise, no matter how far gone you feel, that life is still waiting for you. Thank you so much for watching, for being here, and for caring enough to listen. If this video helped you, or if you think it could help someone else, please share it. You never know who might need to hear it today. And remember, you are enough, exactly as you are.